The thing that brings me the most happiness is when I can help my players to achieve their goals. Honestly, sometimes I can win a tournament, and I wasn't so happy when I won last Polish championship as when I was when Humanoid got to ADC.
Hello and welcome everyone, my name is Vicky Wójcik, and I'm joined here by Adrian Hatchy Widera. Why? Because I think people in Polish esports are amazing and should be known by a broader audience. So what's the better way to get to know a person than just to talk to them? I'm gonna do a series of interviews with people from Polish esports, players, coaches, event organizers and esport organization workers, just for you to know them better. But let's start with this guy. He's the greatest coach I know, and you should introduce yourself.
I think Mariusz is going to be really jealous about what you just said.
Oh, sorry Mariusz. Okay, best League of Legends coach I know.
That's better.
That's better.
So I'm Hatchy, and I'm currently coaching devils.one. What else is there to say? We're just trying to do our best. Hopefully we can get to EU Masters and show that Poland is a strong region.
Okay, to start off, what is your proudest moment in your esport career?
I think it has to be the time when I went to MSI. It was a while ago because it was maybe 3 years ago, but still, it's like a top tier tournament. There is only Worlds that is better. So to me, I was kind of the guy who was just coaching from home for the most part, and then I got this big chance to go to the Turkish league and just compete with the team. And then we won the championship, so it felt amazing. Then we went to Mexico, and we won in Mexico, so it felt amazing too. And then we went to MSI, to China, so it's like the biggest tournament. I could shake hands with Koma, I could sit in the chill room with Faker, and that was just amazing. I hope to be back at these kind of tournaments in the future, but to me now, I just wish I could relive this moment again, or get there again, because I think there is a lot of things I would do better. For example, I wish I could take a photo with Koma or Faker. I could, but I didn't. So this is just to me, like, I just have to do it again.
So it's your goal now?
I mean, my goal is definitely to get back to MSI, definitely not to just take a photo with them. So yeah, definitely, I want to go back to the biggest events. So for now, when I'm in the regional league, going to Worlds or MSI seems really far away. But on the other hand, I just know that it's achievable because I was there once. So yeah, definitely, I want to be back there.
Okay, a lot of history. Can you make a quick timeline of your career?
It's a difficult question because it's not like I'm memorizing it or thinking about it every day.
Okay,
but
so
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I have it here, and you can tell me, okay, I'm back to 2016, but you've been on this scene for longer.
Yeah, so basically how it started, it was like, I just started to watch League of Legends. I was watching a lot of it. And back in the days, it was the time when LCS started, so before there was no league such as LCS. And I was just watching TSM from NA, so I watched Darius vlogs, or I watched their TSM videos, and I was just like, wow, that's so cool actually. They just play games and they make
I want to be that guy.
Yeah, I want to be one of them, but I quickly realized that I suck as a player, so there is no way I can be a player. So I was like, what else can I do? And I started to enjoy competitive games. So I was still a very bad player, I was around maybe silver level. But I enjoyed watching it, and quickly I realized, I was going to university back then, and I quickly realized that my day is basically stacked with League, because when I wake up, let's say at 7 a.m., I started with the Chinese League, and then when Chinese League ends, the Korean League started around 10 a.m., so then I watch the Korean League, then Korean League ends, and then we have EU LCS at like 3 p.m., and then EU League ended, and then there was NALCS, so basically full day was just watching League. And then I realized, I spent so much time on just watching the game, so maybe I can make something out of it. And definitely the biggest inspiration was just watching the Summoning Insight. It was the show made by Monte Cristo and Thorin. And yeah, I learned a lot about the game. And that's kind of how I started to believe that I can try to be a coach. Because I was like, okay, I spend a lot of time on it. I started to understand the game very well. Maybe I'm not the best, but I'm going to just try to reach out to the teams and ask them if they need a coach.
Yeah, I read an interview in which you said you wrote to 250 person that you want to watch their games and help them.
Yeah, so basically how it went, back in the days there was like a challenger ladder, but also for teams. So there was 5v5 ladder and the teams were playing, so there was like 50 teams in challenger. So I decided to add every single player, and before I did that, I made like a quick note in a notepad about like, hey, I'm Hatchy and I want to just watch your games and say what I think. Like, just give me a shot, I will write what I think. If you don't like it, I will never bother you again. And I just remember that I added all these players and I just had it like copied. And I just waited, maybe they will accept me, I will just send it fast. Hopefully I can get it done. And it was a funny story because only one player accepted my friend request. And he said he accepted it by a misclick. Because the high challenger players, they get tons of invitations to the friend list. So he just refused all of them, but his hand slipped. He wasn't the best player, but yeah, that's how it happened. And then and he was like, "Yeah, we actually Challenger Series is coming. We kind of thought that we need someone. Okay, why not? You can try." So that's how it started. And it was tricked in the Danish in Denmark, yeah, but it was like a European team.
Do you keep in touch with them?
I actually met him in solo queue.
Oh.
Because I'm a bit better player now, and he's a bit worse because he's not playing professionally again, like anymore. It's Mikey R, I believe, his nickname. And yeah, we just met in a random solo queue game. I was like, wait, I know this nickname. And then we were like, oh my god, you kind of made my career. I was like, if you wouldn't accept me back then, maybe I would never be a coach. So yeah, we chatted for a bit. It was pretty fun. But yeah, that's just it. We just spoke for a while, but still good memories. The funny story is that even though I accepted him to the team, it's like 2 months later I benched him, so that's pretty rough.
Oh.
But then he became a manager, so that was fine.
All right, and then what happened? What year was it?
I don't remember exactly, but it was like 2014 or 15. It was long ago, but maybe 14. But it was really long ago. Yeah, it was probably 2014. It was around September. So since I started to do league full time, I decided to make like a very rough decision. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna drop out from university and just try to do it full time because hey, I can always come back to the university, but only now I can try. And I was kind of lucky because when I started, literally like 2 months ago, I announced that coaches are a thing now, and every team should have a coach.
Yeah, but because they didn't recognize coaches.
Before, yeah. Right. So like literally, I started my career, and then 2 months later, they announced that coach is a thing. Every team needs to have a coach. So I was like, well, that seems like a good moment.
Think now.
Yeah. So it seems like a good moment, and then in the first team, I wasn't really the best coach because I was more passive because obviously I'm just starting, so I was learning more from the players. I was giving my suggestions, but I was not really leading a team. But it helped me because I got to know a lot of people. In the Challenger Series qualifiers, we lost to the team who finally made it to the Challenger Series, so it was pretty close. But yeah, that's how I got to know the players, because when I benched Mikey R, I got a player that is Polish actually. I got Babunia instead of him, who is now known as Ipon, and that's the person that I made the team with later on.
Okay, and you were 21 back then, 2014, and then what happened? What toll on what was the experience like, what effect it had on your private life?
That's a tough one, because I think esports is about sacrifices, like a lot of it is, because when you start to do it full time, like when you practice with the team, back in the days you usually practice between 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. So all of a sudden all your evenings are gone. Back in the days I was in a relationship, and she was going to university in the mornings, I was working in the evening, so suddenly it stopped making sense. So yeah, the sacrifices that I had to make is definitely my private life. I think many pro players have to sacrifice their private life because they start to do a league full time, and that's something that many aspiring people don't know about. So they are just going to school and they think, hey, yeah, it's awesome to be a gamer, but you kind of have to sacrifice the young years, like the early years of your adulthood, right? So I had to sacrifice my university, so it was a lot of time and money from my parents, because obviously I didn't make any money back then, so they were taking care of me. And I also had to give up on my relationship and my friends, so I had to fully commit to my career. So this is something to remember about. If you want to go pro, you have to do it full time. If you have to do it full time, there is sacrifices you have to make. So there's a lot of fun things that you have to skip, right? So that was it for me.
And what was the decision like for your parents? Did they understand?
Oh no, it was very difficult. And actually my experience with my parents helped me a lot in coaching later on, because I was there. I literally know how it is if a player has problems with the parents. So obviously the moment I dropped out, I moved back to my parents' house. I had a really bad connection, really bad internet. I had like a limit of 1 gigabyte per month, so I had to choose which games I'm gonna watch when I moved back, because else I would just cross the limit and then I have no internet at all. So I would have to just very carefully choose which game I'm gonna watch, or I would tell my friends to download a game for me and so I can watch it from YouTube. So yeah, and they were always pushing me, okay, go to work, you're not working, what are you doing? And I remember the funny story is we actually moved to the village, but like around that time, like a few years earlier, and we had to build a fence around the house. And my father would always tell me, come help me build a fence, which is perfectly logical, I should do that. But at the same time, I had scrims with my team, and I had to explain to my father, hey, I kind of need to go. I know I didn't help you much, and like the day is gonna be long, but I have to go and practice. And we had huge fights over it. Obviously, for them it was just me playing games. They didn't understand that something like an esports is a thing, because honestly, it wasn't really a thing. Nobody knew about it. It was really early days. But yeah, we went through some fights. I was like, I still have to do it. I believe I can make it. And I went for it. And sometimes I thought I'm gonna have to leave the house, or I'm gonna have to go to my friend's house, or I'm gonna just have to try to do things on my own. So yeah, it was rough. But also over time, it also helped me to convince my parents that I can choose the way for myself. Because yeah, at first they were doubtful, but they saw that I could make it, that it wasn't for nothing. Okay. So right now they trust me with everything I do. Yeah.
And how many times did you have to convince the players' parents?
Oh, it's almost every time. It's very rare still, especially in Poland, that parents just understand what you want to do. So it happens. Like I've heard so many stories. It's almost tragical what some people have to go through. Sometimes they were literally kicked out of the house. So yeah, it happens a lot. I think the Scandinavian countries have the most support, so they rarely have to deal with something like this. Although I know some people who had issues with it there as well. But in countries like Poland, for example, still until this day, sometimes it's a big battle with parents. So I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of like educating people that this is a thing right now.
Okay, and from your perspective, what is the exact role of a coach in League of Legends?
So to me, I remember, because it's funny because it was like a process. At first when I started to be a coach, I thought to myself, okay, I'm a silver player, because back then I was, and I need to learn the game better. So it's all about the game. So I remember I try-harded a lot. I was really good at like the macro things and stuff, because I thought this is the most important thing. I'm a coach, so I have to teach very good players on how to play the game. But over time, when I already had this knowledge, I suddenly realized that it's not about the knowledge anymore. Because I think that the issue that coaches have is sometimes they expect they will tell players what to do and they will just do it. It's almost never working like this. It's like a process of making them come to the best conclusion. So through the process of, for example, conversation, you need to make them think this way about the game, because then they will actually start doing this. Because if I just tell them and they don't understand it, they don't know why they should play like this, they will just not do it, they will not forget, they will not remember about it.
And next time they will make the same mistake.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. So over time it became like quite obvious to me that it's more about just dealing with personalities. So it's more about the leadership skills as well. So I think right now I would say it's like almost 70% is just like the conversation and talking to the players, and the 30% is the knowledge of the game. Because also over time I think the knowledge became more accessible for people. So they know a lot about the game. Like today they know way more than years ago. So you have players that are kind of specialists at what they're doing, right? There are things you can help them with team-wise, but individually, sometimes, not very often, you just can't do much, because they know a lot. But you can manage the group. You can tell them about teamwork. You can explain to them how they should work together to achieve their goals. And yeah, that's the biggest thing. Honestly, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen that like if I would just commit myself fully to explaining the game, it would not have the same benefit if I commit myself almost fully to managing the group. So this is much more important right now.
So what is the most common problem the players have?
It's very different from player to player. It's very difficult to say, because obviously there are players who are like easygoing, and it's very easy for them to just hang out with people and live together. And sometimes there are players who are very good players, but it's very difficult for them to work in the group. So it's a very individual thing. It's very difficult to say. Because also players right now, they are on like a different level of experience, I would say. Because some of them can be great, but just rookies, so they need more help with how to work in a group, how to work in the gaming houses. But there are also players who are veteran, and sometimes they have great knowledge, they know how to handle the team, but there is some stuff in the game that they have to improve on. So it really depends.
What are the core values, the core features that the coach should have?
I think it's very important for a coach to develop his own style. I don't know if there is anything I can say about like core values, because I know coaches who are very different. So I think everybody has a different approach. To me, I definitely want players to believe, to know exactly why they are where they are. So like what are their goals, and to understand that in the end they all have a similar goal and they have to work together in order to achieve it. And that's something that is crucial, I think. If the team doesn't understand that, and there's frankly a lot of teams who don't. So like sometimes every player in the team wants to be a superstar, and there's nothing wrong in that, but they have to remember that no matter how well they play individually, if they don't work as a group, they will never come out as great players. Because even if you are a great player on a team that doesn't work together, you will lose tournaments and nobody will ever hear about you. And this is something that I've noticed with many players who are great and never could go to a higher level, because they were just playing for themselves and not for the team. So to me, I think the thing that brings me the most happiness is if the players can achieve their goals. And sometimes I can be a factor that will just slightly make a difference in their mindset, that they will change something. So something sometimes very small, and that will make them go to LEC, for example, or win like the best awards. So I would say just be the person that your players need, because that's the important thing. Because if you have 5 players, every one of them can need something else. So there's not one like guideline or like a book or a guide that you can have for a coach. I think the most important thing is to get to know your players, because everyone will need something else, something different. And you have to fill that gap for them. You have to give them that.
Don't you think that players that have the drive to be a superstar, the drive to improve themselves, are working harder because they're working for themselves, or is there's no difference?
It's not actually that simple, because honestly, not like there's like any motivation is good motivation. Some players play to be superstars, some players play for money, some players play for fame, some play just to compete. And honestly, everything's fine as long as that's what drives you and it gives you enough energy to do your job. So there is no bad motivation. I've seen players who play for the money purely, sometimes because they want to be rich, sometimes because they want to help their family. And as long as this is what drives them and they remember about this goal, they achieve great things. So honestly, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's there. The worst kind of players are the players who don't know why they're playing. They're just playing because they happen to be there, they happen to be good enough. And nothing really motivates them. They just play because, like, what else can they do, right? So this is the biggest obstacle for some players.
And what drives you?
What drives me? Oh, that's a good question, honestly. Because I haven't even really thought about this, so I'm actually the example of the worst kind of person, I believe. No, but honestly, like, real talk, if I have to think about it, as trivial as it sounds, I believe that, as I said earlier, the thing that brings me the most happiness is when I can help my players to achieve their goals. Honestly, sometimes I can win a tournament, and I wasn't so happy when I won last Polish championship as when I was when Humanoid got to LEC. So this was the moment that really made me happy, because I know how hard he worked for it. So honestly, that's it. I think I really love when I can help players develop, and not only as players, but also as people. Because oftentimes, even if I don't work with a player, 3 years have passed, we didn't work together, they still reach out to me just to talk or to ask me for advice. I think this personally gives me happiness, because I know that I became a person that they can count on, that I'm a reliable guy for them. So this is what drives me. I want to help these guys out, because honestly, every new team, every new player that I have, it's a separate story, it's a different story. And if I can be a part of this story that will help them go in the right direction, then I just feel very happy.
Humanoid is now in LEC, from Polish League to LEC. There are many aspiring young players in Polish League right now. Who is your star to watch, who will probably go there?
Oh, about the stars to watch, I think we have a couple, but let's start from the top, because right now the best team in Polish League is Rogue, and Rogue definitely has these kind of players. So for example, Inspired, everybody's talking that he's a superstar, he's a super talent. We have experienced bot lane in terms of Woolite or Vander. They both were in LCS already. I think they can get to LEC if they work hard. But I honestly think that we in devils.one have a very interesting project, because we gathered some of the players that have a potential to be superstars. I think the question that I was most often asked by, for example, people from Ultraliga is, how are you going to make this work? Because you have Agresivo, who in Shatamaga was the main carry. Everybody wanted to play around him. You have Matisław, who's a great mid laner, who was also carrying his teams. You have Laker, who in Academia was also the big star, and everybody played around him. So how do you want to have all these players who were stars and make them work as a team? And that's the great challenge, because we can play technically around every player, and we need to make them understand that they will all be stars if they work together. So yeah, I think we have players in every role that can be stars.
And how is it going so far?
I think it's going fine. Obviously, we have a bit less experience than Rogue, so we struggle sometimes. But I think we're getting there. It's a long-term project. We have longer contracts than usual because we know that we need time. A lot of the players that we have right now were never working with a coach or were never working in gaming houses. So we take it slow, one step at a time. I think from game to game, especially when we meet Rogue, we can see that with each match we have some improvement. So I'm positive. I'm positive because we are working hard. The thing that I always tell to my players at the beginning of the split, and I said it again with this team, is that we can't really know if we're going to be the best for sure when the journey starts, right? But the only thing that we can play for and hope for is that at the end of the split, we can look back and say that we did our best. Because no matter how hard we work and no matter how much we will improve, we can't be sure that Rogue or someone else will not improve even more. Sometimes that's how it is. But the one thing that I demand from myself and from my players is that we know at the end of this journey that we did our best. And that's what I hope for.
Oh, I hope for it too. Obviously, because we are working in the same team.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, that really helps. And you said about the Polish Regional League, but you were obviously in 3 countries, in France, in Turkey and in Poland. What is the difference between the mindset of the players and the whole esports industry community itself in those countries?
So I think right now there is not many differences between the regional leagues in terms of the mindset, but I think there is quite a big difference between the regional leagues and Turkey, for example. Because in Turkey it's like the scene is professionalized for many years. So even if the players are not top tier, but they are good enough to be in the highest league, so in the TCL, they already know more about being professional because they made more sponsorship deals, they had more photo shoots. Every time they are coming to the office for like years and years.
So they have TV commercials.
Yeah, so they have their daily routine. So it's much easier to work with them because they understand also how it works. Sometimes you have, in EU you will have often players that never worked with a coach. In Turkey it's much easier because if you join the team, like they know for years now they have coaches. So they know, okay, coach is the boss, for example. But if there is a new player coming to the team, there is always some experienced guy around him that will tell them, hey, this is how things work. So they are used to the day. They know how much they should sleep. They know how much they should play. They have this daily routine and match routine. They know, I would have players that know exactly at what hours they have to eat or do something else, right? So their own activities, how they relax before the match. And in Europe, it's much more wild because until very recently, for example, in Poland, nobody had a gaming house. Nobody could work like offline on their issues. I think Spain is the most experienced region, so I believe there have to be some players who are more used to this. And yeah, that's the big thing. It's on the regional leagues we still have to learn and we still have to teach how to be professional. In Turkey it's much easier when it comes to that. So that's the main difference, I would say. Because sometimes the players that are even inexperienced in regional leagues are much better than some veterans of the Turkish league. But for some reason, I think that's for exactly the reason that I mentioned before. Sometimes these teams from Turkey are beating the teams in regional leagues, even if they're worse players, because they have better work ethic. They know how to play as a team. For example, what I like about the Turkish players, some of them know they are not the best. They know they will always be in TCL because there is no better talent, Turkish talent around, but they know they are not the best. So they are like, okay, but we're gonna get this player from Europe or Korea, and we have to make him work. We have to help him as well as we can. And I think that's the mindset that is very helpful in building the team. It's very threatening because sometimes it's easy to get lazy. I know some players who just take it as like, okay, so whoever gets better import win, I'm never gonna do anything, but he has to carry me. But it also helps if it's a smart player, he knows, okay, I may not be the best, maybe I'm gonna have to face some Koreans on my lane, but I get this great guy on this role, so I have to play for him. So I think it's much more mature just because the scene is there. Like they know how it works, they know how esports work, because they live in this environment for years.
And how long do you think it will take the Polish scene to get to this level?
I think the Polish league still has a way to go, because the first thing is everybody has to start working offline. It just helps so much. In terms of your daily routine, for example, I know even with experience with our players, if we have the first boot camp, everything is organized. They wake up at the same time, they eat at a similar time, they practice from certain time to improve their skills. And I know that if we go home for a week, sometimes they will wake up 3 hours later, for example, because it's just harder to get the discipline going. So I think the gaming house helps a lot in terms of discipline. So that will be the first step. I think as a Polish league, we make amazing progress, tremendous progress. It's really going great. Compared to last year or 2 years ago, it's a massive improvement. But for example, Spain already has most teams working in gaming houses, and that helps a lot. I know that France also has a lot of teams who have gaming houses. So that helps, and I think that's a natural step for us to take. Hopefully there will be more money in the scene, and I believe we have so much talent, honestly. Even if you talk about Rookie of the Split in LEC, you're going to mention Self-Made Man, and if Mystics had few games in LEC, already people are saying, oh, he was great, he was much better than Cassing, for example. So yeah, we have so much talent, and this talent sometimes comes from places where they have no coaches, no gaming houses, no nothing, no offline practice. So if we can get the infrastructure going, I believe we can produce even more talent and be like a powerhouse for Europe.
All right, yeah, that's gonna be great. And if you are thinking like game-wise, EU Masters is coming, so where would you place Poland, Polish league among the other regional leagues in like seeing the power standings?
I think the Polish league is as good as French league on top. Like these are the two best leagues right now.
Right.
Spanish league was a bit disappointing. In previous years, Spanish league was the best, but right now we see bottom teams winning against top tier teams like all the time. So it's very hard to say what's happening in Spain. Spain is really awkward. So, but I would still say Spain is right behind us. Because I'm not talking about the overall league, like whole league. I'm talking about EU Masters participants. And I believe the top two teams from Poland will be better than top two teams from Spain. And I think top two in France will be on similar level as Poland. And then I would say it's going to be Germany. I think Germany and Spain are on a very similar level. And then it's going to be UK and other regional leagues that don't have, they are not as popular, let's say. But yeah, that's how I would rank it. So I think definitely the tier 1 is Polish league and French league, tier 2 Spanish and German league, and then tier 3 is like UK.
Okay, and we are coming up in the playoffs of Ultraliga. On Wednesday we're gonna play against Rogue Esports, who gets to the final and who plays with the, I don't know how to say it, the third place, fourth place, the qualifier, next qualifier. This is a very weird scheme. And well, how do you think it will go for us?
As I said earlier, I'm not really expecting a win no matter what. Obviously, we all dream about winning. That's our goal. We want to win. But the most important thing is to play well. Because we know that our goal is more long term. And we know that mainly we want to show ourselves on EU Masters. So first we need to get to EU Masters. This match will not determine whether or not we are in. Obviously, if we win, we are. If we don't, we still fight for it. But when we talk about the Rogue game, I just hope we play well, if we play a very good game. Because I think Rogue is currently the best team out of LEC, so I think they are the favorites to win EU Masters. So this is like a great test for us. If we can beat them, that's going to be amazing. If we can't, I still believe we can be one of the top teams in Europe, right? So we take it as a test of skills. If we can play well, if we can play a solid game against them, I believe we can show whole Europe that Poland has not only one, but two great teams. So that's what's important to me.
I have a trivia at the end because I don't know, maybe you want to talk about something else, give it to the broader audience, the English audience.
I don't think there is anything in particular that I want to talk about. The one thing I want to tell you is, I know everybody knows Rogue already and everybody will be talking about Rogue, but just keep in mind that there is more good teams in Poland, and I believe devils.one can surprise you as well if we get to EU Masters.
We will. Okay, so quick 3 questions, I think, just for fun. Apex or Fortnite?
Apex.
Why?
Because I never really liked Fortnite. I mean, I love our players from Fortnite. They are such nice guys and they're working really hard. But I actually tried Apex, and Fortnite was just like always not interesting to me, so I never really tried the game.
Oh, this is a very interesting aspect. Do coaches are game specific, or you could switch to another game and it would be harmful for you?
That's a good question, and I believe honestly that I could work in any game, because as I said earlier, I think the game knowledge is the lesser factor in terms of coaching. There is a lot of teams who have coaches who are specialists at the game, and it's still not working just because there is something missing. So I think sometimes if you have players who are very knowledgeable about the game, they sometimes need a good leadership. And I've been working with some of the teams that we have here, and I know I could help, and they told me I could help, or that I helped when we met. So I believe I can catch up to a certain extent in terms of game knowledge. And I'm never probably going to be the best if I switch to other game, because there is just years of knowledge that I can never catch up to. But there is a lot I can bring to the team, even if it's related to just the things outside of the game, and that can help the teams a lot. It's kind of like you ask about, let's say, sports psychologist. Like sometimes it's very different with discipline, but everybody should help, like get their help if he can. So I think it's very similar with coaches.
And do you think organizations should get a game coach just for game knowledge and everything, and then a coach to make the team work?
Yeah, I think that helps. I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe in Korea it's kind of like this. If you have a head coach, he's not specifically related to the game. It's just someone who organizes the whole work for the organization, right? Or like for a division. So that's just something that is working. And I believe we are not quite maybe there yet because it's not a very popular model in Europe or NA. But I believe it can work. I think there is a potential in that.
Okay, so another question. Who is more impactful on the game? The jungler or the support?
I believe definitely the jungler. In all my teams, I always wanted to have a leader in a jungle position. I believe it's easier for a jungler to set up the tempo for the game. And I believe that if your jungler is just really bad, it's hard to show your skills on other lanes. So to me, I usually start to build a roster from a jungler. That was like, it was no different here. When I got Synchro here, with experience from Movistar Riders, for example, I knew that he can be a leader, and that was something that I really need. Like sometimes I would value the knowledge and leadership skills in the jungler even more than mechanics, for example. Because I believe that if you have a smart jungler who can also lead the game, who can be a shot caller, even if he would not be the greatest mechanically, for example, he can really help the lanes to show their skills, if he can play for them, if they can play their game. So definitely jungler has the bigger impact here.
Okay, and what role do you play on solo queue?
I definitely play jungle because I like to have a big impact. So yeah, definitely jungle is what I like doing. I don't have really time to play team games, but back in the days when I was starting as a coach, I also had like a team of friends that we played with, and I tried to be this kind of shot caller. So maybe it just comes more natural to me. Maybe the system is more similar to what I see in my head, right? So yeah, that's definitely the reason.
Okay, and the funny questions, bananas or apples?
Bananas. I believe bananas. Bananas are better. Like bananas are even good for your focus and stuff if you're a pro gamer. So all the team's players love bananas, and I love bananas too.
Okay, so one apple a day keeps the doctor away, and one banana a day makes you better play?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Even though it's not quite correct in English, but yeah.
Yeah, but it works. Like a banana.
It works, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so thank you very much. This was Hatchy. He is the coach of devils.one Polish team, taking up for the finals in Ultraliga, hopefully. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope you liked it, and I hope you'll watch other episodes. They're gonna come up soon. Leave a comment, leave your feedback, tell me who should I interview next, and hope to see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.